Hey, so why did the obtuse angle go to the beach? Because it was over 90 degrees. My name is Loretto, and along with the team at 240, I'm here to help you conquer your certification exam. This video is going to prepare you for the NES Essential Academic Skills Math exam. That's test code 007. Let's get you a license to kill it on test day. We're gonna cover 3 things: what's on the test and how it's structured, the most likely concepts that will be on the test, and we're gonna look at a few practice questions. Ready? Let's go. Now, the NES Essential Academic Skills Math exam consists of approximately 45 total questions that come from 5 competencies. In simple terms, they are numbers and operations, algebra, geometry and measurement, statistics and probability, and mathematical reasoning. Each competency has descriptive statements under it that give more information about what to expect. We'll briefly overview the descriptive statements for each competency, and then further expand on a key concept that is a need to know for your exam. This first competency is called numbers and operations. The big things you're going to see here include place value, order of operations, and problems involving fractions, decimals, and percents. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is knowing how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide, and in what order. And you'll need to be able to handle whole numbers, negative numbers, and trickier numbers like fractions. But hey, don't worry, this mission isn't impossible. All right, let's start off with fractions, decimals, and percents because they come up a lot in this exam. You'll likely be given a number, for example, 6%. Then you'll be asked to convert that number into a fraction. Our study guide gives you helpful flowcharts like this one to help you solve the problem. In this case, we'll start with the 6% and follow the arrow to the fraction box. This tells us to go from a percent to a fraction. We need to put the number over 100, remove the percent sign, and simplify. So 6% over 100 becomes 3 over 50, meaning 6% is equal to 3/50ths. Now don't forget, you will definitely need to know the order of operations. That's that whole please excuse my dear Aunt Sally thing. And you'll need to know your place value charts. Like, really know them, like forward and backward. Well, actually, don't forget about that whole backward thing, that'll probably mess you up. Anyway, that is a quick trip through competency 1. If you need to brush up on any of those skills, check that link below. That brings us to competency 2, which is all about algebra. In this category, you're gonna work with patterns, evaluating expressions, equations and inequalities, and graphing ordered pairs and linear equations. Now I know it can seem overwhelming, but don't get shaken or stirred up. Solving for x is pretty straightforward. The test will give you an equation like this one, and then you have to solve for x. So you would have to simplify it as much as you can, balance the equation, and you would find that x equals 5. Now that was a pretty solid beginner example, but remember, they do get more difficult. You may need to deal with a variable attached to more than one term, or you may be given an equation that contains both x and y, and you'll need to use them to graph a line. But don't worry, we covered it all in the guide linked below. Okay, that's it for competency 2. Next up, we have geometry and measurement. You'll see questions involving measurement tools, unit conversions, scale and angles, and properties of 2- and 3-dimensional figures. That last one means you'll need to know how to calculate things like area, volume, and perimeter, and you'll need to use them in word problems too. This can be tricky. Let's take a sneak peek at the lesson for proportional reasoning.
We'll work through 3 examples to try this method out. The scale on the map is 1 inch to 2.5 miles. If 2 cities are drawn 6.25 inches apart, what is the real-life distance between them? First, draw the outline of a proportion inside of a rectangle. Label the left side of the rectangle with the units from the scale provided in the problem. In this case, inches and miles. On the top of the rectangle, label the first fraction scale and the second fraction object. Next, place the provided conversion in the first fraction. In this problem, we know 1 inch represents 2.5 miles, so we match our units with those written to the left of our rectangle and write in 1 inch over 2.5 miles. In the second fraction, write the known and unknowns. In this case, we know that the cities are drawn 6.25 inches apart. We'll place an X for the unknown actual distance in miles. Cross-multiply and divide to solve for X. And then to make sure of everything, remember to double-check the reasonableness of your answer. Since the cities are drawn more than 6 inches apart, and it's 2.5 miles for every inch, it makes sense that the cities are actually a little more than 15 miles apart.
I just love learning from videos, don't you? That was Cherie. She's one of the many all-star tutors and one of my good friends we've got in our guide. Our team is here to help you get ready to pass your exam with confidence. Ready for competency 4? Here we are at statistics and probability. And I know those are two words that often strike fear into the hearts of millions, but I've got you. In this topic, you'll see questions on finding the probability of events, analyzing data in different formats like scatter plots, calculating the center and variation of data, and using statistics appropriately. Let's take a closer look at calculating the center of your data. For those types of questions, you'll want to make sure you remember how to calculate the mean, median, and mode. Need a refresher on those? I've got you. 5 students have their height measured. The data set is 158, 155, 164, 155, and 168. What is the mean, median, and mode? First, rearrange the data from least to greatest. The mean is the average, so all these numbers added up, divided by the number of data points, or 5, gives us 160. The median is the middle value, so 158. Lastly, the mode is the number that appears most often. So the value 155 appears twice, that's our mode. I know that's a lot to remember, but we've got tons of opportunities for you to practice in our 240 study guide. Our final mission, mathematical reasoning. In this category, you'll see questions on evaluating the reasonableness of a solution, using algorithms, using inductive and deductive reasoning, and representing math concepts in different ways such as graphs and tables. And don't worry if you don't have a team of analysts back at headquarters. You can break this down into reasonable chunks of intel. Often you'll be given a question where you could do the math, but you don't have to do the math to know the answer. For example, Sam receives $10 allowance per week. Using money from her allowance alone, can she buy a boat that costs $30,000? Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know that many kids that own their own boats. But let's think about this anyway. It seems unlikely that Sam will be able to buy a yacht. But doing some simple estimates, Sam will get $520 per year. Rounding that to an easy number, let's say she gets $500 per year in allowance. Next, let's knock off some zeros by dividing both numbers by 100 to make this math easier. At that rate, it would take Sam about 60 years to save for a yacht. So even before we did the math, mathematical reasoning made it pretty clear that it would take a long time to reach $30,000 by saving $10 a week. And just to be sure, we did some estimated calculations to understand the ballpark of time it would take. Being able to think critically about math and math problems is super helpful in all 5 competencies of this test, not just the last one. So if you need a little practice, try out our study guide to brush up. And that's it! We've gone through all the competencies. Now that we've gone over some of the big concepts in our 5 competencies, let's look at some practice questions to show you how these concepts can appear on the test. If you want a lot of practice questions, you can click the free Plan to Pass test below. It will tell you your strengths and weaknesses and help you zero in on the subjects to study. Now for questions. Let's start back at the beginning where we were converting between fractions, decimals, and percents. Marcia asked all 72 children at recess, and only 1/6 said that their favorite ice cream flavor was strawberry. Which of the following expressions can be used to determine the number of children who told her strawberry was their favorite? Okay, so first, I know I need to start with 72 for the total number of children, but all these answers start with 72, so that's no help. Then I need to multiply 72 times the decimal that is equivalent to 1/6. To turn a fraction into a decimal, I divide the numerator by the denominator. So 1 divided by 6 is 0.16666 repeating, so 0.167. B is correct. Ready to look at algebra? Now before I show you this question, remember that I told you they get harder, and this one delivers. Which of the following options shows a logical and correct first step to solving the algebraic equation given? Even though this is algebra, we still need you to remember the other thing I warned you that would be on the test, PEMDAS. So we start with the parentheses. If we distribute the 3 and the -5 to their respective parentheses, we'll get this choice. 6x plus 3 minus 5x minus 20 equals 11. Let's look at a geometry question next. This one is pretty different than the one we looked at before, but you'll need to know the properties of shapes to solve this one as well. A measurement of 6 yards is how many feet longer than a measurement of 189 inches? First, convert all units to feet. Then, to find how much longer 6 yards is, use subtraction. So, 2.25 feet is the correct answer. Let's move on to statistics. Earlier, our example had to do with mean, median, and mode. Graphs and plots will also show up a lot on your test. So let's look at one of those types of questions. A school cafeteria offers 5 different meals and serves each meal on a set day of the week. A teacher takes a survey among her students of which of the 5 meals is their favorite. Which of the following should the teacher use to display the results of the survey? Well, a pie chart is best to show how a whole data set is divided into parts. A pie chart is a great way to visually depict how many students named each of the 5 meals as their favorite because it visually divides a whole by percentages. So this choice is best. Last up is mathematical reasoning. Brian is in charge of purchasing gifts for the teacher aides in his department. He is to spend between $15 and $20 for each of the 15 aides. Which of the following is an amount Brian could have spent on these gifts? Now this one is a little bit more tricky than a kid trying to buy a yacht. We're gonna have to do some math here. There are 15 teacher aides and Brian can spend between $15 and $20 on each. So 15 aides times $15 is our low end, and 15 aides times $20 is our high end. 15 times 15 gives us 225, and 15 times 20 is 300. The only answer choice between 225 and 300 is 275. So C is the only reasonable answer. All right, remember for more practice questions, check those links down under. Congratulations on finishing the video. If you found it helpful, give it a like. There is still plenty more to learn. Did you know that thousands of teachers have passed their certification exams using our study guide? If you really want to make sure you're prepared for the NES Essential Academic Skills Math exam, take the next step and subscribe to the 240 study guide. It has hours of video so you can watch and/or listen while doing your chores. It is test aligned so you know precisely what you need to study. And it has hundreds of practice questions so you can be sure you're ready. And it has a money-back guarantee. So click the link below right now to get started.